Judgment to give. Or just. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, for God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
What? Roll call, please.
Good morning. Director McLaren? Here. Director Gindi?
Here.
Director Arica? I'm sorry, Director Recca? Here. Director Martin? Here. Director Paris?
Here.
Pete Thompson?
Here.
Arden Wells?
Here.
Maureen?
Riley. Here.
Maureen Riley? And Craig Harden?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. We're now on adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Kathy.
Second.
Seconded. And is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We're in public comments for non-agenda items. Does anybody have a public comment on non-agenda items? Good morning, and just come up to the podium and state your name.
This is Watermaster and Board. My name is Benny Moore. I'm with Moe's Water Station. I'm located here in Lancaster. I wanted to let the board know I will be leasing a percentage of my water rights out for the pumping to interested parties, as many other water right holders have done. Out of respect to the Watermaster and the board, I would like to know if the Watermaster and the board would like to know how much water is used by these parties. Although according to my documented rights, I am not required to do so. I will be setting an amount of water that will be used per year. That is fair and equal to all other water right holders. Although historically, these rights have no set amount. I would like for the board to take a vote on this matter today, if possible. This matter will help the safety of the aquifer and be a benefit to the public as they were intended. This is being done out of respect to the Watermaster as far as the Air Force asked to have done. Also, about 2 months ago, that was done. If anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. I am willing to help in any way I can. Please contact me at 661-724-9277 or email moswaterstation@aol.com. That's moswaterstation@aol.com. Your help is greatly needed. My address is 3600 Harbor Boulevard, Suite 110, 470, Oxnard, California, 93035. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moore, and I'm going to have our attorney comment on that. We've been through this before. I think we should let the public know what the legal position is from our attorney. So,
Right, and yeah, I like to know the legal position because I haven't heard from the attorney either.
Okay.
And the last time I wrote a letter was here about a year ago, so everything is documented.
Yep.
And I have all the papers that he has.
I appreciate it, Mr. Moore. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes,
Mr. Parton.
we've been clear on several occasions with Mr. Moore that
You're going to need to talk louder and make sure your speakers are.
we've had a number of occasions with Mr. Moore asserting that he has water rights based on federal contract. We have communicated in writing to him or his representative that we disagree that he has any legal right to water use or to lease water rights, and what the implications are for people that get involved in that transaction. So no facts have changed. Just alert the board to that situation.
So, Mr. Moore, I think you heard that. It's the position of our legal counsel that you have no rights to pump water, and I believe anyone getting involved with you on buying water from you would be in the same position. And so that's where we stand. There's not going to be a vote taken because it's not agendized. And so, we've been through this, I think this is the third or fourth time I remember. So that's our position. You've had your time for public comment, and you can certainly speak with our attorney after the meeting.
Okay, can I just ask your attorney one question and in the board? Just one quick question. And the question is, the Bureau of Land Management, which is the federal government, is he saying that their records are no good? That's the only question.
I'm not going to put him on the stand right now. You certainly can talk to him after the meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Always appreciate you being here. Now we're on the consent agenda, financial reports, payment of bills, and our minutes.
Move to approve.
Motion made to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second to the motion. Is there any discussion? Let's take 1 minute to take a look.
Rob, just for the board's knowledge, last meeting, Mr. Yarosik had asked about the past due accounts.
Yes.
He wanted a little bit more information.
Yes.
So if you notice, we put a slide up on the screen for everybody to see. And it's just kind of a little breakdown on how our delinquencies are. And I think the main question would be the $511,000 that is outstanding. And those are on two accounts that are basically for litigation. All of our other accounts are doing fairly well. The 78,000 that we have for payment agreements, those agreements are being paid in a timely manner. They're keeping their accounts current and they're paying their obligations on time.
Great.
Okay. The other ones for Exhibit 4, there's actually only 12 producers, and I think we've even gotten that down a couple more because we've had a couple payments come in since we've done this. And that's only about 18,000. So overall, it's not bad, for what we have to do. And I just want to remind the board that in September, we always prepare a delinquency list for the board that has to be certified for the courts. And that we will, again, do in September.
Super. Thank you for the information, Betty. And
Any questions?
Teresa's here, and we're going to be paying bills. And you pay our bills. Anything you want to point out, Teresa? Okay. I know how you like to come up and talk, but I'm not going to have you do that. Okay. I'm sorry. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda and a second, and it looks like we might have some more public comment, and I might have gone too fast on that. So let's do this motion first. Any comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And I'm going to go back to public comments. I did not ask after Mr. Moore came up if there's any more public comments. So are there any more public comments? And sir, I saw you getting up. Are you? And I'll just ask Angel, do we have an agenda item?
What is your name? Yeah, so they're on the list for the new producer.
Okay.
So they can come back.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have an agenda item where you will be able to speak at that time. So we'll just wait till we get to that. And anybody out there on Zoom anybody raising their hands for public comments?
No.
Okay, we'll move on. Advisory Committee report, Dennis?
Good morning, Dennis Lamro with the
Morning.
Advisory Committee. As historically has been accurate, the memo will speak for itself. We did raise some questions on some of these items for the board to consider. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the recommendations.
Thank you, Dennis. Any questions of Dennis regarding the advisory committee report? Nope.
All right, thank you.
You're off the hook for a while. Now we're on item number 8, presentation of the 2023 annual financial audit. And who is going to be presenting, Peter?
So we'll have the audit presented online, and then Teresa is here to answer any questions on that. And Angel, can you set us up and introduce our speaker?
Yeah, so this presentation will be given by Jonathan with CJ Brown and Company. Jonathan, are you on the line?
Yes.
Okay, and I can advance the slides for you.
Yeah, thank you. On behalf of our firm,
Can you just state your first and last name for us so everybody has that?
hi, so my name is Jonathan Abadesco. On behalf of our firm, CJ Brown and Company, we're here to present to you the Watermaster's financial statements for 2023. Okay, so our audit process, we follow the auditing standards issued by ASCPA. We always make sure that our audits follow federal and state requirements. And we follow the accounting principles issued by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. Yeah, next page, Angel. Okay, so our audit process is divided into 2 phases, interim and final. So the interim phase of our field work, we first gain and understand the Watermaster's controls, and we perform tests of controls from receipts and disbursements and your bank reconciliation statements. Final field work, it's comprised of auditing your trial balance, as well as all its components, from assets down the line to expenses. And we also consider fraud when we do our testing. And we always keep in mind a professional skepticism mindset where we not only obtain documents, but we audit them, we question them, and corroborate those information with third-party information. Next slide. Okay, so the report on page 1, we have concluded that your financial statements is in agreement or in accordance with U.S. accepted accounting principles. Next page. Okay, so also I believe in your board packet you have this management report. So the management report just summarizes that we did not find any control deficiencies or any material weakness or significant deficiencies in your audit. So I just would like to commend the AVEC team from Peter, Teresa, for providing us with all the documents we need to complete our audit. Okay, so financial highlights. This is your balance sheet or your net position statements. As you can see on the bottom right, your net position, it increased by $78,000, which I will explain more in the next slide. Okay, so your total revenues, it decreased by $454,000, primarily due to a decrease in your replacement water assessments compared to the prior year. And your expense total, it decreased by $1.7 billion, primarily due to a decrease in your replacement water purchases compared to the prior year. Next slide. Okay, so in summary, we issued a modified or clean opinion. Your net position, it increased by $78,000. Your revenues and expense decreased by $454,000 and $1.7 billion due to replacement water assessment and replacement water purchase decrease compared to the prior year. Any questions that the board or public members may have?
Questions, board?
Nope.
Any public questions? I think you've explained it very well to us. Teresa, anything to add? Okay, Jonathan, thank you for the presentation. That should bring us to, and you're complete, you're done, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and have a great day.
Well, we appreciate your help and the work you've done on this, and you might want to hang around while we do the vote on approving in case there's anything that comes up at that time. Okay?
Yes, yeah, we'll do.
Great. Okay, that brings us to item 9, consideration possible action on accepting and filing the annual financial report for year ending 2023. Is there a motion to accept and file the annual financial report for year ending 2023?
Motion.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded, made. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, again, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the professionalism of AVEC staff and your board as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you, Teresa. That's a great accomplishment for us to have a completely clean audit. And now we're on item 10, consideration possible action, selection of RFQ respondents. And I believe that's Peter.
All right, thank you, Chair Paris. We're happy to present 2 statements of qualifications today from Provost and Pritchard and from Regional Government Services. And Pam Clark has put together a brief presentation to give an overview of those statement of qualifications. So I'm going to have Pam Clark.
Thank you, Pete.
Go ahead, Pam.
Good afternoon, members of the board. On page 70, you'll find a staff report for this item, but I'll just talk through the process, give a short review of the statement of qualifications we received, and then the staff recommendation. So first, request for qualifications to provide professional administrative services for the Antelope Valley Watermaster was issued on May 2nd, and those responses were due on June 7th. The selection of a Watermaster administrator is a 2-phase process. So the first phase is to review the statement of qualifications that we received. And from that, select respondents to invite to a public interview with the Watermaster. Those interviews are going to be a request for proposal. And that's a more detailed scope of work they'll provide and a fee for services. And then second phase interviews of those submitted RFPs. From that, we'll select an applicant for second phase interviews. And then one applicant will be selected to negotiate a scope and fee for services. And so as Pete mentioned, 2 firms responded to the request for qualifications, providing their SOQs by the due date. That was Provost and Pritchard Consulting Group, and then also Regional Government Services, or RGS. Both respondents meet the minimum qualifications that were outlined in the RFQ. And then we provided a table that kind of outlines qualifications for both the firms. You can see they have similar qualifications all the way through. Neither firm has a conflict of interest. Some of the highlights are both have general knowledge and understanding of groundwater, hydrology, and California water rights, laws and regulations. Both firms have administrated over adjudicated groundwater basins. They've also prepared and facilitated for public meetings and have experience with financial management, budgets, reporting, and audit prep. And then based on those qualifications, staff is recommending that the board select both Provost and Pritchard and RGS to participate in public interviews with the Watermaster. We're also requesting direction on whether to conduct those interviews at the next board meeting in July or hold a special meeting for that purpose. In talking to Pete, I think we have a fairly light agenda for July, so we do feel there's room to do those interviews if that's what the board wants to do. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions of Pam from the public, from the board? Okay. Is there a motion to select Provost and Pritchard and RGS to participate in a public interview with the Watermaster?
Motion.
Motion made. Seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you for the presentation, Pam.
Thank you.
Nice delegation, Peter.
Thank you.
Does the board want to give any direction in terms of when those interviews take place?
Thank you, Craig. I think as soon as possible. Are we good for July interviews? Everybody good? Yeah. We're good with July interviews. I would believe the interviews will be in closed session. That's how we participated before. Is that correct? Or
Actually, I think they were in open session before.
The initial, I don't believe they were in closed session. I think they were
the initial
the
interviews were in
that's
open
right.
session, and then the
That's
selection process was
That's right.
Okay, so just put it on the agenda. Do our schedule. Go ahead.
Would it be a good idea to start an hour earlier?
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, because
Yeah.
this will take a good time.
I think that's a great idea.
So why don't we plan to, everybody, our next meeting will start at 9 a.m. And why don't we do put it first on the agenda after our opening to do the interviews, and then they don't have to stay long.
Great idea.
Okay?
And do
Okay.
you want staff to make up questions to start out the interview process, or how do you want that process to start?
I think work with Peter. Peter and staff can work up the initial questions.
And I'll circulate those to the board members.
I think we did a lot of work the last time we did it, so it should be
Fairly easy.
pretty well. Okay. Do you have enough direction now?
We
Yes.
do.
Okay. Anything else you'd like? Okay. So now we're on item 11, consideration possible action to review May 2024 new production invoice. Peter?
And you're going to be impressed again, Rob, because I'm delegating this to Angel. She's going to go through this item.
That's what a great leader does, delegates to very capable people. Angel,
Thank
you're
you,
up.
Peter. Yeah. So in May 2024, as most of you know, Watermaster staff invoiced new producers who failed to submit their production reports, even if they did not drill a well at that time. Several of the producers have requested that that invoice be either waived or adjusted. At last month's board meeting, the board instructed staff to work with these producers and others who had similar requests to collect their outstanding production reports before the board would consider adjusting those invoices. So staff has worked with these individuals, and we have collected past annual production reports. And I put a little chart here just to show you who I have worked with and the adjusted invoice amount after collecting those production reports. As you can tell, most of them either did not have a well drilled at the time, or their well is not complete. Therefore, they have not produced any water, except for Wesley Ellis down there at the bottom, he did submit an annual production report and it was 0.02 acre feet. So his adjusted invoice amount would be $11.45. With that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions of Angel? Is anybody in the public who would like to be heard at this time?
Can I say something briefly before that comment?
Sure.
The board, I direct the board to page 26 of the agenda packet, where the advisory committee sounds like they had a very vigorous discussion of the pros and cons of how we might proceed here. I just want the board to be aware of it and welcome comments from anyone who participated in the advisory committee discussion of that to point out what their issues are. As far as I understand it from some members of the AC, they are concerned about setting precedent. The rules and regulations have been known for a long time about what we require and what the consequences are. But understand, and I understand, this largely is people who have not produced any water, so there's no harm to the basin. But I just want the board to be aware the AC had some, I believe, vigorous debate about this.
Okay, and Arden, do you want to comment on that too, since as far as if they haven't drilled wells and they aren't using water and they've produced their reports, do you see any harm to the basin and what action we would take?
As long as they've communicated with the Watermaster that they have not drilled a well, I do not see any reason that it's caused harm to the basin.
Okay, very good. And staff recommendation is that we accept the adjusted invoice amounts that is listed in this exhibit.
Yes, please. And I did also want to say that we've collected quite a few production reports through this process, so I think it's been a good process.
Great. And you're satisfied with what has been turned in and that you verified this information?
Yes, and when I was collecting production reports, I have collected production reports for each producer from the time their well was approved. So if they were approved in 2018, I now have production reports going back all the way until 2018, just for the record.
Okay.
The Watermaster.
Very good. And thanks for all the work on doing that. We appreciate that. And Craig, if you can help me with the motion, help the board. The motion would be to accept the recommendation of staff to adjust the invoices per the exhibit that we're all looking at.
Correct. Exhibit on page 119.
Okay.
The administrative memo.
So I do have one question. And I don't know if you know, but were there other people that had not drilled a well that paid the invoice anyways?
Yes, so there have been quite a few producers that have just paid the invoice and have not questioned. They just understood the rules and regulations and they were okay with paying the invoice.
Well, that's a good question. So I believe it's fair that we're not what we're doing right now, but if we have other people who have drilled wells that have paid invoices, it would seem if we're going to do this, we should refund those amounts to them, because this would be the position we're taking, that if people haven't drilled a well and they're not using water, that they shouldn't be charged for that.
I agree with that if they submit production reports like the others.
Okay. Now, how difficult would it be to communicate with those that have not done wells to do what the people here have done so we could verify that?
I can look to see how many and reach out to them.
Okay. Why don't we put that as an agenda item next time to review that? Is that okay with the board? Everybody okay with that? Craig?
Yes.
Okay. Then,
Chair Parrish, this is Dan Clifford. Can I just address the board really quickly, please?
yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Okay, thank you very much. Director McLaren hit on the issue that was being discussed at length at the advisory committee. And it's, you said it yourself, it's a good question. Some people are complying with the rules and regulations and others simply are not. And even though we go back to the nub of the issue, which is, has there been any injury to the aquifer because there's been no pumping? And the answer is there hasn't been any, but we do have the rules in place. And we were trying to square the recommendation to not collect the amount against the fact that other people have in fact paid it. I don't have an answer to that issue, but I do think it's one that the board needs to struggle with a little bit, because at the end of the day, it needs to be fair to everybody. So that was the issue. I just wanted to call it out, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the time.
No, Dan, I think that's a real good comment. I'll just respond. As my position on AVAC, we have a committee that we meet, we go over these things and give recommendations to our full board. Our full board in public session talks about these things, and the direction given to AVAC is we understand what the rules and regulations are, but as we get into this more, we want to be fair to the public and give them every opportunity to do the right thing. Obviously, if this becomes a constant problem with the same people, then we might take a different approach, but this is the first time that this has been brought to our attention, and at least the AVAC board was clear that we should do what's fair for the public. And so the recommendation by Watermaster staff to me seems appropriate at this time, and if we put on the agenda to look at the other ones, I don't see that we're in direct conflict with our rules on this issue. That's my comment. And is there a motion to approve the staff recommendation to approve the adjusted invoice amounts as shown on the exhibit on page 119 and is before us?
So I can make that motion, but I would like to also point out, because of like what they're saying, we're trying to do it in fairness, and that this is the first time, but we have to make sure that we look at it a little bit differently, I think, in next time, because all the administrative costs that we had of doing what we just did, that I think what they're saying is it's because that's what they're saying here, that the administrative costs and multiple contacts with the parties, charging a portion of potentially waived invoices to cover additional administrative costs. So maybe the next round, before we do that, we say, even if you didn't understand it, that we have to charge some sort of minimum cost for industry into.
So your motion is to approve the staff recommendation pursuant to the exhibit on page 119 of our agenda packet and what is being displayed.
Can I throw some?
You would. Yeah, so.
Revision of those so that it's clear. I don't know how you would add that to the
Point, I don't think we need to for us now. That was, Kathy's question was great to look, have other people paid that haven't drilled wells, that haven't used water. Angel has told us there are. So we're going to put on the agenda to talk about that specific issue next month. And then we will make a decision about how we will handle those
Separate, okay.
in a separate
Going
motion.
forward.
Yeah. So all we're doing now is making a motion pursuant to staff's recommendation to adjust the invoice amounts as shown before us, which is on page 119 of our agenda.
Very good.
Okay. Would you like to
I'll
second that motion?
Okay.
Motion made and second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no further discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously.
Chair Paris, just briefly, I want to just state that unless directed otherwise, our staff will continue to bring fees forward in the same format. As we have new producers that come forward, produce production reports that show they haven't produced any or drilled a well, we'll bring those up to the board for their recommendation and action.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, this meeting's open to the public. Producers or those who haven't produced are aware of what action we're taking. I would think at some point, and that may be next year, that our action may be different. But
Or maybe we put something in the paperwork that they sign, that they understand that there would be,
I think it's probably already there.
Yeah, it's already there.
It's already there.
Yeah.
but is there a there,
It's clear from the
yeah,
rules and
so,
regs.
and that's why I think they have a problem, because it is clear and we've let them basically,
Just
Right, okay.
a little education.
right, so somehow we have to work on that. I just worry about the people that have done everything and,
And we're going, and we'll talk about that next.
Okay.
And see how we're going.
Yes.
All right, let's move on. Consideration possible action on transfer applications. And
oh, did
That-
you have public comment?
no, nobody, I think the action we took
Oh.
took care of public
I
comment.
know you've already voted, but
Oh, Julie. Come on.
Julie Kyle, when you want to talk about a contentious discussion, it was contentious at the advisory level. It was long, it was contentious. When we set rules and regs and people sign their paperwork, you need to share, apparently. So thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Always appreciate your comments. Okay, now we're on consideration possible action on transfer applications. And that's going to be the Arden show. Go ahead, Arden, in person.
Thank you. So our first transfer application for this month is a permanent transfer of 32 acre-feet per year from 50th District Agricultural Association to City of Lancaster. And so I'll give a summary of this, and then I will pass it to our Watermaster Council to provide some comments as well.
Great, thank you.
Great, so this is a one-time transfer from 50th District Agricultural Association, which is a state of California party, to City of Lancaster. And Lancaster was granted the right to produce under the judgment of 500 acre-feet per year at their soccer facility if recycled water is not available. And last month, they received another 50 acre-feet per year transfer of Exhibit 4 production right, which does not have a point of extraction affiliated with it. So that did not have a material injury analysis affiliated with it. This also does not have a specific point of extraction for the application. So we did not conduct a material injury analysis. The advisory committee reviewed this, and they had two concerns that they raised, that they recommended that this is reconsidered once those are addressed. The first one is they say that the judgment states that the state of California parties can produce up to a total of 787 acre feet per year if supplies from District 40, AVEC, and RCSD are not available. And the question is, should this amount be proportionally reduced? The second concern is the question of, can a single state agency have the authority to authorize a transfer to another party outside of the state agencies? And they voted 10 votes to table these until the concerns are addressed. And now I'll pass it to Mr. Pardon.
We plan on addressing those in a subsequent memo and discussion for the July board meeting. The recommendation now of council after looking at this, these issues were raised with us, with general counsel on Monday, and we didn't have a chance to respond, or what I think needs to happen is put in a memo to you answering these questions and any other questions related to the transfer. As I understand it, they aren't objecting that the transfer is legal from the Agricultural Association to City of Lancaster, but what the consequences of that might be have been raised by members of the advisory committee. And I think they're good questions. I think I don't have immediate definitive answers to them. And I want the time to be able to do that at the July meeting. So the request would be to table that to vote on that transfer until the July board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to table resolution R2430?
Motion.
Motion made. Second. Motion second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of tabling the motion on resolution R2430 or action on R2430, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. That brings us to item B. Arden?
Thank you. This transfer is a transfer from Antelope Valley Mobile Estates to Antelope Valley Mobile Home Park. And this is a permanent transfer of 8.75 acre feet. So Antelope Valley Mobile Estates is an Exhibit 4 party in the central Antelope sub-area. And this transfer is due to a change in ownership. So AV Mobile Home Park is the successor in interest to AV Mobile Estates. And this is of their full production right of 8.75 acre feet per year. We'd like to note that AV Mobile Estates requested to remain an Exhibit 4 party with no permanent production right and maintain its 22.4 acre feet of carryover water. So this would mean that any use of this carryover water that is not at the original parcel would need to have a material injury analysis or be subsequently transferred to another party. And so because this is transfer related to a property sale, and they've stated that the production will be used in a similar volume and similar manner, no material injury is needed for this transfer. And the advisory committee unanimously recommended this application for approval.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, is there a motion to approve resolution R2431?
Motion. Second.
Motion made. First. Seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution R2431, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We're on item C, resolution R2432.
Thank you. This transfer is a one-time transfer of 150 acre feet from Pamela Godey to Robertson's Ready Mix. So Ms. Godey has property in the central Antelope sub-area and has not produced from water at this parcel in several years. She currently has 807.21 acre feet of carryover water available for use. And Robertson's Ready Mix, they were the successor in interest to Service Rock. And they have 3 parcels in the southeast sub-area west of Little Rock Creek. They have a production right of 267 acre feet per year, and their production can vary from year to year. Last year, they produced 580 acre feet. And so this transfer is to cover any future replacement water obligations. And they've received several transfers in the past, several one-time transfers to supplement any incurred replacement water obligations. We include hydrographs in the report, and I do want to call your attention to Figure 2. We note that there are 2 USGS wells that show water levels near Little Rock Creek, and from 2006 to 2023, we saw, for the most part, decreasing water levels. But this past year, with the high water levels and also recharge in Little Rock Creek by the Antelope Valley State Water Contractors Association, we do see a significant increase in water levels near Little Rock Creek. And this increase is actually almost equal to the decrease since 2006. So also taking this into account, we do not believe that this transfer will cause a decline in water levels or that continued production at these rates at Robertson's Ready Mix will cause a decline in water levels in the area. And also the advisory committee recommended this application for approval. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Any questions?
No.
Any questions out there? Hearing no comments, is there a motion to approve Resolution R2432? Motion made by Brooke. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve Resolution R2432, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Brings us to new point of extraction application. Arden?
Thank you. The application today is for Ludwig Farm. They're a known small pumper requesting a well that is about 900 feet away from their existing well. They're a small pumper under the name Erlinda Koo in the judgment. And so this is within the same parcel, and we do not find the risk of material injury. I'd also like to just note that as part of the annual report this year, we looked at evapotranspiration data on small pumper parcels to do a routine check and see if any parties are using more than 3 acre feet per year. And we identified 2 parties potentially using more that we'll look into a bit more, but overall, everyone does not have any significant irrigation occurring on their property. We'll have the caveat with that as well that the evapotranspiration data does not include greenhouses.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions? So is there a motion to approve Resolution R2433? Motion made. Is there a second? Second. Second made. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve Resolution R2433, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We're now on new production applications, and I believe that's still Arden's show.
Thank you. We have one new production application this month for Mr. Carlos Rodriguez. He is requesting 1.5 acre feet per year for domestic and agricultural use. He's intending to have a 1,600 square foot single family home with a small barn, 10 heads of livestock, and some fruit trees. I'll note that after discussing with admin staff and council in our letters to new production parties, we're including a bullet list of all of the requirements, including annual reporting, submitting the well completion report, quarterly meter production reports and the payment of administrative assessments and replacement water assessments for future production. Reviewing this, given the small amount of production and the obligation to pay replacement water assessments for any production, we found the potential for material injury to be negligible. Are there any questions?
Any questions of Arden?
No.
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve resolution R 2434?
Move. Second.
Motion made, seconded. Get it? Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve resolution R 2434, say aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion's carried unanimously. Now we're on consideration and possible action on Todd Groundwater's budget and scope of work for 2025 and 2026 and 2027. Arden, are you presenting?
Yes, so we have some slides to share regarding the a sort of cost-benefit analysis of the production application that we originally proposed as an optional task for 2025. And the advisory committee recommended approving the budget without this application. So we just wanted to share a bit more detail of why we believe that this is important for the basin and could both help save money in the long term as well as significantly increase our ability to monitor production aligned with the judgment. So on this slide, we have our 2025 budget. We divided it into 6 tasks. After last meeting, we assumed that the board did not want this to be an optional task, so we included it as task 6. But I'll note that the proposed metering application is $28,910 for the estimated total. It would put the 2025 budget at a total of $228,898. The total without the metering application would be $199,988. And we'll note that all of the budgets that our estimates are not to exceed budgets. And so in the past, when things have gotten tight, we've tried to stay below the budget and some tasks are reduced. There's the option to ask for more budget for specific tasks, but our goal is to accomplish everything we propose to do under the budget and not exceed that. So the next slide shows just a summary of the 2025 through 2027 budget and the assumptions that we made in regarding to metering and reporting. We made these budget estimates using the assumption that we would have the application. So looking at the 2025 budget, the task 6 metering app development, testing and implementation task is $28,910. And this includes the time to test and integrate it with the water accounting system and our meter compliance tracking system. So it's not just making sure that we have this developed, but making sure that it's rolled out in a way that is usable and ready to use for the parties, as well as well integrated with our database, so that as parties submit their data, it automatically updates our database. For 2026 and 2027, our budget did assume that we had 20 fewer hours under metering and production monitoring. And this is because we assume there would be time that's saved by the application for meter production digitization, our file organization, and identifying inconsistencies in production reporting. And I'll note that without the metering app, our current budget may not include the ability to conduct what we consider annual audit of production. Last year was the first year that we had room in our budget to conduct this audit. We looked at all of the submitted quarterly production reports, from the beginning of the year and the end of the year. We made sure that what's shown on the meters matches what is reported. And we checked that against what was submitted in the annual reports to make sure that the parties who were reporting were accurately reading their meters as well as accurately reporting what is on their meters. And that's backed up by the photographic evidence. So on the next slide, this is sort of a description of what we envision with the application, what the reporting workflow would look like. And this application is through Google App Sheets. And so it kind of functions as a Google form, but in a way that walks parties through the steps on how to report and then automatically takes the data and puts it into a spreadsheet that we can then sync up with our database. So parties could sign in as the party, and then they would have a drop-down list of the wells that they have reported with the Watermaster, as long as the opportunity to add if they have a new well and select what their totalizer units are. Then they would input what the reading is and take a photo, and the totalizer reading would then enter our spreadsheet, and which is compatible with our metering and production database. We'll note that we don't expect everyone to get the units or the readings right the first time for our current metering production review abilities without the application. And this is what we really see as what is the bare minimum that we need to be doing to make sure that we're receiving, organizing, and with limited budget, doing the bare minimum to review these data. We have time for, right now parties submit a PDF that has their pictures and the information via email. We need to file that data, organize it, and we need to summarize which parties are reporting, track the compliance. I included 30 hours for this bare minimum comparison of annual reporting to meter readings and sort of the audit to make sure that everything is going correctly. But we'll note, because our current budget includes 20 fewer hours for this task, we may not have time every year under the current budget to conduct this review. We also, when parties, for example, have produced much more or much less than they've reported in previous years, especially if they're incurring a lot of replacement water assessments, I like to go back and make sure, okay, let me look at their meter readings and make sure that we're not sending them an invoice that is the result of improper meter readings. And so we have extra time for a little extra attention for parties that may have big differences in their annual reporting, as well as right now, we're not able to represent the seasonal production of all parties in our model. We only have the budget to really look at major producers or what will count as representative parties. So we have 15 hours for digitizing all of the monthly data for select parties, but we don't have the budget to digitize the data for every party. So the next slide is time estimates for proposed tasks with the app. And if we didn't have the application, this is really how much time that it would take. So with the application, we expect that once we have everything tested and up and running, it would only be about 15 hours a year of organizing this data and making sure that everything is harmonized and organized with the database. And once again, we'd be able to more quickly automatically produce compliance tracking spreadsheets. We are hoping that with everything digitized, we'll be able to have the comparison of annual reporting from the metering data to the submitted annual reports. And we're hoping we'll be able to have that in time for invoicing, because that will be much more automated. Because often we wait until towards the end of the year to see if we have the budget to do that. And that's also with the annual report rush when we have the time to be able to do that task. And then I think most importantly, we'll be able to digitize the quarterly and monthly data to represent seasonal data for all parties to make sure that they're represented in the model. And that's really where it would just take 100+ hours in order to digitize all of that data, make sure that the meter readings are accurate, while we're able to, with the application, you can just have the list of numbers and the photos and go check, check, check. So double checking annual production would also reduce that time for individual cases or parties. So the next slide, we list out some of the additional benefits on the next slide. On the user end, we believe that it's easier for parties to report their production. They can go out to their well, take a photo, submit it from their phone. Hopefully we'll have it so they can also do it from their computer in the Google Forms sort of format with that. And parties can more easily update their contact information. We'll talk about this in the Watermaster Engineer report, but when we sent out emails to parties about compliance, we had the wrong information for email addresses for many parties. We'll make it so parties can more easily see their meter documentation status, and we'll try to build in the capability to receive monthly, quarterly, or annual reporting reminders for parties. And the final slide for this is just want to summarize that right now we don't have the budget and capabilities to fully utilize the data from our quarterly and monthly reporting. If most of this time limitations is due because we don't have the data in a digitized format, and we would have to digitize it ourselves. This opportunity would allow us to represent seasonal production for all parties in our model and analyses. And our estimate with those 20 hours a year, it might save us about $4,200 a year, but it would also greatly improve our ability to improve compliance and data quality. Thank you.
So I would imagine you're asking for approval of the entire budget for 2025, and then we would approve the 2026 and 2027. And this is a lot of information that the advisory committee did not have. So, Julie, I'll let you have the first stab at it for the advisory committee.
May I? Yes. I have a question and a comment.
Oh, please, yeah.
Sorry. So this sounds great, but not everyone embraces technology in the same way. So if you have, just an example, 100 users and 10, 15 do not comply this way and just continue with their PDF, that's going to throw your numbers off. And that is a big issue. I don't know if, Dennis, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Oh, sorry, quick question. Was it assuming 100% adoption by all the parties?
We don't expect that the adoption will be from all of the parties, and we want to continue to give parties the option to submit their reports through the PDFs. With the current budget, we may not be able to digitize all of those data, but it will significantly decrease the demand of what needs to be digitized.
And talking about the cost, can you clarify what the rate, the hourly rate, what level is actually doing this?
Yes, so for this, I put the hourly rate at $210 per hour, and that is what my proposed hourly rate is in our proposed budget. We didn't break down by member of the Todd team exactly who would be doing it.
Okay, any other question? Or no? Dennis, hi.
The only thing I can really add is the discussion did not include the cost savings in future years because we weren't aware of that, or we missed that somehow in the proposal. Other than that, there's several members available online and in the room if you'd like to ask their opinions.
Thank you, Dennis. Julie, would you like to comment?
At the advisory level, we did vote 11-0 to not include the 28, but we didn't have a lot of the information. We didn't have those slides, so we clearly weren't able to have the discussion. And I agree with you, Angelica. You're going to have some old school gal like me that is going to continue to do it the old way because I'm not a techie, and there's quite a few of us out there. But I mean, we're always looking for ways to save, and that's a big save for us in a year, 28,000. Thank you.
And I'm betting big money that Arden can teach you how to use this app.
I'm a hard nut.
Rob,
Yes.
Stan Powell has his hand raised.
I'm sorry, who does?
Stan Powell.
Hi, Stan. Would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, just a brief comment that we did not have the cost savings. The cost savings look pretty real to me and significant, which would make me believe that this is something we should proceed on. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. And I'll just give comments from our AVAC committee and our AVAC board. We felt strongly that the application probably would bring about cost savings, but the same thing we didn't know for sure, like the advisory committee. I see two things we can do. We can approve the entire budget without this and bring over the additional cost for the app at our next meeting, give Arden a chance to present as she did to the advisory committee and get comments so that we have further information, and out of respect for the advisory committee, give them a chance to weigh in based upon what they see as the cost savings. That was the recommendation by the AVAC board. So that would be.
I would move that we do the budget minus the 28,000, and we bring that back after everyone has a chance to get all the information so they can really understand it and see the possibility of savings.
Okay. So the motion will be that the budget for our Watermaster engineer for 2025, 26, 27 gets approved as presented, except for in 2025, the $28,910 for the application. That will be the motion. And then the request will be that we bring this portion back for our next meeting after Arden has had a chance to present this to the advisory committee. So the motion is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And then this will be put on, the 28,910 will be put on for further discussion. The only thing I was thinking about, we're in June right now, maybe when we have that discussion, maybe look at, do we have the funds somewhere this year that's not being used in our budget that we could actually push this for 2024, just a discussion item, not that we would do it, because the sooner we got this implemented, the sooner we're going to have savings. And if we have some funds for 2024, it would be interesting to know if we could find that. And Peter, I'll delegate that to you, and I'm sure you'll delegate that to someone.
No more coffee Friday.
Okay.
Nice.
So, good job, Art, your budget.
Thank you.
And
Thank
you'll
you
have
very
a little
much.
more work for the other part.
Looking forward to continuing to work with all y'all.
Thanks.
We do appreciate you guys and the hard work that you do.
Administrators report.
right?
Lots of delegation here, right?
Yeah, it'd be pretty bad if I delegated this one out, but, so I'll take this. Wanted to walk you through a few items and go to the next slide and talk about what was accomplished in June and a little bit of what we have going forward. So just going to touch on a couple of bullets that haven't been brought up in this meeting. So go to fourth bullet down in June. We did send out the nomination requests for the landowner elections. So those are out there, and I'll let Patty correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we need those submitted by June 28th, unless if there's any nominations that need to be considered. So make sure to get those turned in. We did post for the public hearing for the annual report, and that annual report will be at our July meeting. Also want to look moving forward to July. Those landowner elections will be held in July, overseen by the city of Palmdale. We are going to start sending out reminder notices to all the parties that haven't responded to the billings of replacement water or variable invoices. There will be a draft RFP this time by the July meeting for your feedback and potential approval. And also wanted to highlight that we're going to have our second quarterly 2024 budget versus actual report. So we'll have Teresa there for that one. And then just wanted to note that because of the delay in the RFP, that'll probably push us out to, could push us out to approving the request for proposal out towards August, which might mean that we're not doing the eventual interviews until September. So just wanted to note that potential delay there. And other than that, we wanted to let you know that we have the letter of appreciation for the cannabis enforcement, and that's on page 209 of the agenda packet. And we'll be looking for a signature from the chair, and then we'll send that out probably tomorrow. And also wanted to note that there's been a request that we look at doing an update to the transfer application to designate years of carryover that will be used on these different transfers, and staff is looking at that. We're going to work up a draft and then also run it by Todd Groundwater to make sure it makes sense. And we hope to have that for you at the July meeting. And I'm hoping to have that draft RFP out to the board members and the advisory committee by the end of next week for early review. And then last thing I wanted to note is that I will be absent. So in the spirit of delegation that's been occurring in this meeting, Pam Clark will be sitting in this seat and administrating the meeting in July.
Very good.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions of Peter? Okay, thank you. We'll go on to the Watermaster Engineers report. Arden.
Thank you. I first just want to say what a joy it is for me and Maureen to be here with all y'all. This is our first meeting in person, and it's really nice to see so many faces in person. So thank you all.
Thank you, Arden.
We're going to start with our tried and true summary of new production and qualified small pumpers. We've got 1,039.32 acre feet per year of new production total. That's up 1 acre foot from last month, and continuing no changes in approved qualified small pumpers over the last few years. So the next slide. So we have big updates on the compliance letters. We sent out emails to most of the parties, just letting them know what their status is for metering and what their status is for quarterly production reports. This did not include annual production reporting status, and we did not send this out yet to some of the parties that have more complicated metering and production reporting situations, such as having shared or transferred wells or having installers that are in pretty regular contact with our colleague Garrett, who oversees the meter documentation. So those will be coming soon. We want to note that many of the email addresses were either missing or bounced. So we're working with Angel to get more of those updated from 2023. And we're planning to send out physical letters to the parties who we didn't get a response from. But we have had some fruitful conversations. We've been sort of splitting our annual report review into 3 parts. Last month, we shared the first overall summary of the findings from the report. So we'll continue on with a review of some of the groundwater conditions for this meeting. And the board is invited to raise hands, ask any questions as the slides come up or at the end, and we'll have an opportunity for public comment at the end. But first, I just want to summarize some big themes. This past year, 2023, was the 8th year since the final judgment, and it's the first year since ramp down ended. The basin conditions are showing pretty clear responses to the wet conditions that we had, and also the high volume of imported water that was both used by parties or stored. There's an overall decrease in overall production because parties that had the option to use surface water chose to use it. And overall, there was over 117 acre feet of imported water into the basin, and 79,612 acre feet of that was stored water recharged into the basin. And another big theme is that our model update is near completion, and so we did add a modeling section to the report. So the next slide, just showing the precipitation over the past year. In blue, we have the monthly precipitation in 2023 and in spring 2024, compared with the gray bars that are showing the average monthly precipitation. So this just gives perspective not only of what a wet year it was, but how unexpected and unique all of that rainfall in August from Hurricane Hilary was. So the next slide then, I shared this last month, but this is just showing our reduction in production since the judgment was implemented. We see that this past year there was slightly above 60,000 acre feet, including the recovery of stored water in this past year. And this is much lower than the native safe yield of 82,300 acre feet per year. And the reported production that was not the recovery of stored water is less than 60,000 acre feet. Now on the next slide, just also bringing up that summary of imported water and recharge. Last year, the Table A allocation was 100%, and parties also received additional water from surplus flows and was able to recharge that. There were 9,515 acre feet of water that was spread at the Little Rock Creek pilot project. And we anticipate there was a higher natural recharge. And so this table just shows by state water project contractor how much water, imported water there was. And on the next slide, in each annual report, we look at the groundwater elevation contours for the report year and the recent spring. So this slide is showing our contours for spring 2024. And from year to year, these contours show the same general trends where there tends to be water flowing towards the center of the basin in the central Antelope sub area. But we'll note that the dots show the wells that are used. We only use wells that were measured for this year in both 2023 and 2024, so that we have a fair comparison from year to year. And many of these wells are representing conditions at recharge and recovery locations, as well as at well fields. And so consequentially, often the water levels and the water level change tend to be a little bit skewed towards activity that's occurring at sort of these high action areas. Oh, is there a question? don't think so. I'll continue. On the next slide, it shows the change in water elevations from 2023 to 2024 on the next slide. And
Next slide.
oh, all good. So in these purple areas, these are the areas where water levels have increased. And the dark orange levels are areas where we see a bit of a decrease. Now note that these are interpolated, and we believe that the extent of changes can be a little bit overestimated sometimes, just because we don't have that many data points relative to the whole basin. But a few big things stand out. We see the West Side Water Bank has a huge increase in groundwater levels over this past year. And that's because spring 2023 was still representing conditions from quite a bit of recovery, recovering from the past 2 dry years. And then there was a very large volume of recharge that occurred throughout 2023 and also during spring 2024. We'll also note that near Little Rock Creek, there's a very large difference in water level. A lot of this might be a little bit skewed by 2 of the wells are right near the creek. They're USGS wells, and they may a bit overly enthusiastically represent conditions right next to the creek, but they do show overall trends that match what we see in much of the southeast sub-area. And this increase is due to both natural recharge. We tend to have in wet years more of the recharge entering the basin through sort of dry washes and creeks. But a lot of this is also due to the recharge efforts by the state water contractors over this past year, and that 9,515 acre feet recharged into Little Rock Creek. We also note that near where a lot of production wells are, because parties used surface water instead of groundwater in 2023, we saw recovery of water levels near well fields. So the next slide shows from year to year, we sort of calculate our change in groundwater volume. And this calculation is based off of methodology that was used in the adjudication process. But we note that while these show the overall trends in how groundwater volume is changing, the exact numbers can once again overemphasize recharge and recovery operations, but they show the correct overall trend. So for example, in 2021, we calculated a negative 130,000 acre feet. And when we went back and really looked at the water budget based off of our reporting and observation, while this was a year where there was a significant decrease in volume because of all of the recovery operations and the very dry conditions, this number is much lower than realistically. It should be closer, less dramatic, closer to 0. And similarly, this past year, we calculated using the methodology almost 300,000 acre feet per year of change in groundwater volume. This was a year where we had a significant increase in change in groundwater volume, but it may not be as high as 300,000 acre feet per year. We are still finalizing our change in groundwater volume numbers calculated by the model, so we weren't ready to show those yet, but it does show overall, since the judgment was implemented, we have seen increasing groundwater volume in the basin, and the trends that are being shown here are accurately represented. So in the next slide, I'm going to briefly go through land subsidence. On the left, we see the land subsidence from 2015 to 2023. So the green is showing areas where the land has increased from 0 up to 0.1 feet. So that's maybe an inch, but because it's so low, it might be within the range of error. Similarly, the yellow areas are areas where the land may have decreased by up to 0.1 foot, so about 1.2 inches, but we don't know how dramatic that is, and it's within the range of error for the land subsidence monitoring in SAR data. From June 2015 to October 2023, we do see some areas shown in orange where the land has subsided by up to 0.2 and up to 0.3 feet. But we do not see any of these differences over this past year. And on the next slide, I compared the land subsidence from 2021 to 2022 with the land subsidence from October 2022 to 2023. So even though we don't know in these yellow areas what is within the range of error of the INSAR land subsidence monitoring data, we do see that there are significantly lower areas that are showing the potential for land subsidence than in the past dry year. And on the next slide, I'd like to invite my colleague Maureen Riley to share a bit about the model calibration results and some of the modeling data in the annual report.
Hello, I get pleasure of presenting the harder slides, but I want to echo Arden that we're very happy to be here in person, and please ask us any questions, especially about the modeling. We're here to help, so let us know if you have any questions and interrupt me as I go. These two figures you see here are comparing the observed groundwater elevations and the modeled groundwater elevations. As Arden said, those black dots represent wells where we have observed water levels. When we're looking at contouring observed data, we're interpolating. We do that with the help of different programs, but we also use it with a geologist mindset and contour based on what we think is happening. The model simulates groundwater flow everywhere, all the time, automatically. And so allows us to really see a more detailed view of the basin, held to Darcy's Law, held to the data that we do have, and fills in the blanks of where we don't have observed data. The model also allows us to peel back the layers. The observed data we have is from a variety of depths, and often shallow and deep wells are kind of averaged together, where the model represents the elevations by layer. We'll have a layer 4 groundwater elevation map, layer 3. And so we did our best here to compare the two to see if our model is really simulating what we think is happening with the observed. And it's hard to tell, especially at this scale, but it is generally matching our observed and maybe giving us more information about what we think is happening in between those points. As Arden said, our current method of looking at change in storage might over-exaggerate some of those wells closer to the banking operations, where the model wouldn't have that problem because we're looking at water levels all the time in all the spaces. We are still looking at the groundwater budget from the model because we want to compare that with what the observed inflows and outflows, the total pumping we think we know, the return flows from the different crop types. And so we can want to check that before really presenting that in the context that this might be different than the change in storage numbers we've previously presented. For the next slide, you can see how we compare the model to our observed data. This chart's going to need a little bit of explanation because this is a very technical model-y chart. So what it is showing two different time periods. Our y-axis going up and down is the modeled groundwater elevation, and the x-axis going across is observed groundwater. In a perfect world, our modeled and our observed exactly equal each other. So that would be along that dotted line. It's a one-to-one relationship. If our water level measurement says 2,500, our model should say exactly the same number. So we want, when we're looking at model calibration, we want the dots to line up along that dotted line. It never happens like that. Groundwater observed data has variability. The model is interpreting things on a more regional scale than a local observed water level would. But generally, as you can see, the dots line up along that one-to-one line, and it looks good in all ranges, the shallower and deeper elevations. So we are happy with the model calibration. It did not require too much updates of the parameters. So largely the model still has the parameters developed by the USGS, consistent with the physical solution of the judgment. And so it's very consistent with what was done in the past. Do we have another slide?
Just our schedule.
Yeah, then I'm going to toss it back to Arden for the schedule. But if anybody has questions about the modeling or where we are in the process, please let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So our last slide is to just summarize our schedule. By July 2nd, we are planning to have our revised draft posted to the website, and would invite folks to provide their final comments by July 16th so that we have time to incorporate them prior to the July 24th public hearing at the July board meeting. And then we'll have a little quick turnaround and post our final annual report 2 days after the board meeting and make sure that everything is submitted to the court and to the Department of Water Resources by August 1st. Thank you all, and happy to answer questions or receive public comments.
Great. Are there any questions? Any public comment? Oh.
I have one. Regarding your subsidence slide, what do you think is around the areas where you see the greater subsidence? Is there a trend to it?
Yes, could we pull up the slides with the subsidence? And the one before that, I think, where we see overall. So this is probably a mix of both geologically. These are areas where we have clay in the aquifer that are more likely to be susceptible to subsidence. So for example, in the southeast sub-area, even in areas with a lot of production, we have a lot of hard bedrock underlying, or that consists of the aquifer or underlying the aquifer, and it's really clays that cause the subsidence. So the first big thing is just the geology. When you have a lot of pumping, it's the clays that compress from the change in pressure and cause the subsidence. But the other thing could be these are areas that have had higher levels of production in relation to the rest of the basin. And it's really the combination of the two. I will note we don't have the figure included here, but on our map of where we have carryover water, there is a lot of carryover water in associated with wells in sort of this band of the central Antelope sub-area, which does suggest that there has been a decrease in production since the judgment was implemented in these areas that are susceptible to subsidence.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Got a couple of questions. Just quickly, thank you for the presentation, very detailed.
You're welcome, thank you.
For the subsidence slide, you mentioned there's a range of error associated with the database. Can you mention what that is?
Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact range of error. Oh, Maureen does.
It's plus or minus 2 inches, and it's so it is like the 0.1, 0.2 feet. It's within the range. INSAR is now provided by DWR on their Sigma tool, so everyone can see the subsidence and you can choose your time period. And it's plus or minus 2 inches.
Good. And then the other question is associated, it looks like you got the calibration down for the model. What's the completion date that we're looking at to try to get?
So the model, I think, is probably 90% complete. We are working on the final report that will be an appendix to the annual report, and I don't know when we'll have that. Looking at our
Be able to review components.
yeah, and there's a lot of information in the appendix that will probably need time. You'll need time to review.
So bottom line question is, are we getting out of the adjudication what we hope to get out of after 8 years?
Yes, I believe that we can say, especially having our positive change in groundwater storage values that are sort of backed up by the modeling, I feel good about where the basin stands. The groundwater conditions, water levels appear to be increasing throughout the basin, and it appears to be in line with the native safe yield defined in the judgment, and the implementation appears to be going well.
Great. And then maybe a final question for me. The areas of subsidence, now that we've been doing this for 8 years, we have a good idea what's happening. Should we be focused on that? Is it an area of concern for us? Should we be looking at things we can do within those areas to move production water to different areas if we have the ability? I know that some of the wells that are producing for residential use are within those areas. We may have the ability to work with agencies to move water in different ways so that they're not producing in those areas. Are those things we should be concerned about, or is it at that level yet?
At this time, looking at the INSAR data, because there is most of the observed subsidence is within the range of error. I do not feel that that's a priority to look at. However, the parties who have property in those areas, I think if they experience any issues, it would be very beneficial for them to inform the Watermaster.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Excellent presentation.
Yes, we're going to have a closed session where we'll cover most of the legal aspects of the last month. I mentioned last month that Barrel Springs abandoned their appeal. That is the case. Someone asked me outside of my attorney-client relationship whether the Watermaster paid for that abandonment, and we did not. There was no settlement agreement to bring to the public. It was just unilaterally abandoned. So that's the status of that. I'll talk about the other matters. We're still waiting for an opening brief, and there's the Malza matter that should happen in the next week or so. We had a motion to intervene this last month. I keep the engineer aware of the results of those motions so we can monitor that appropriately. And that's essentially what my public presentation is, but we will have a closed session.
And I just want to point out, because it's in the advisory committee report, some concerns about transparency of the billing for our attorneys. We have now provided detailed billing to every board member to go through, and that, from reading the advisory committee report, has resolved that issue for you. And the reason we don't provide that report to the public is it has a lot of attorney-client detail of what litigation we're doing and so forth, but it has been released to all board members, I believe alternates too. But it is a confidential report, so we've tried to do what the advisory committee wanted us to do. So I just want to point that out. If you could let everybody know at the next meeting that that's going to be our standard procedure from now on. And thank you, Craig, for making that happen.
Absolutely.
Great. And the board members' request for future agenda items, I think we've given several to you already. Are there any more that anybody would like to see? Okay, perfect. That brings us to closed session. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So move.
Motion made. Second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to go into closed session, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion is carried unanimously. We will begin closed session in, and give you all 7 minutes.
Ooh,
Oh, wait. 7 minutes, yes. We will begin at 11:55. And I believe we have another meeting coming in at 12:30. We will be out in time for that meeting to set up, so you know. It's fun. All fun.
Yeah, we took our position that we took.